Welcome guys, this is Ola from Stop Me O channel. Today we are discussing Wavelengths DLC, which was a DLC that they released along with the game called True Colors, which was the next Life is Strange franchise installment. I wouldn't call this a review, more like things that I would like to talk about when it comes to the DLC, stuff that I'd like to discuss and ask about your opinions when it comes to what I'm about to say, and you might not like what I'm about to say. Some things at least might not be considered a common opinion, I suppose, so we might disagree on some stuff and I'm willing to accept that. First of all, I wanted to point out that I actually enjoyed the DLC. It was okay. Like, I wouldn't say that I disliked it. There's just some things about it that I maybe didn't like as much, and it might be hard for me to explain what I mean. Maybe some of you will get it. I hope you understand well what I'm about to say. First of all, there will be spoilers in that video, so if you haven't played it yet, then this video is definitely not for you because, well, I want to most of all focus on some points of the story. Having said that, in the DLC we were presented with Steph's background story. It happened in between the Life is Strange games events and True Colors events. We found out why Steph moved out of Seattle, where she went straight after Arcadia Bay, why she moved to Haven Springs, where she met Alex, and where True Colors events occurred. I think it would be very hard to discuss the DLC without talking about another DLC that Deck 9 released, which is Farewell. So as you all know, Deck 9 developed a Life is Strange game before. They developed a game called Before the Storm, which was a prequel to Life is Strange events. Along with that prequel, they actually released another prequel, which was a prequel to Before the Storm and Life is Strange, but mostly Life is Strange, because we were able to see Max and Chloe as kids playing around with sort of a phantom over their heads, because we knew that William would eventually die, so Chloe's father. We knew that Max would eventually leave Chloe. We knew that they would reunite a couple of years later, and we knew that in some cases Chloe would actually die. Now, I need to point out that Farewell is one of my absolutely favorite Life is Strange episodes. To me, it was perfect in so many ways. What they tried to show us, that feeling of being doomed that was with me throughout playing the DLC, the ending, all of it was such a beautiful tribute to Max and Chloe's relationship. It doesn't have to be a romantic one. Could be a friendship, just basically the two of them together. We saw them in their purest form, so kids. We saw the moment when the bond was born. Now, I know that they tried to do similar things in Wavelengths. They tried to present as a backstory to Steph. They partially succeeded. They had a good idea, in my opinion. They decided to focus on the tornado aftermath. At least in my playthrough, because in my playthrough I saved Chloe. So Arcadia Bay was torn down, which means that Steph's mother died, as we found out from the DLC. We found out that Mikey's brother Drew died as well, as an aftermath of the tornado. So my version of the DLC, and I actually don't know the other version as well, my version was seeing the consequences of that event. I think partially that's a very interesting concept. Like, when you think about the continuation of Life is Strange, if you want to focus on the Max and Chloe being together, what happens next? That was partially discussed in the Life is Strange comic books. That's a cool idea to see how people handle that, how people manage to live with that burden of what's left. We know that Arcadia Bay was destroyed. They showed us that in Life is Strange 2, when Sean was overlooking the city. He knew that it was destroyed, and it looks like they haven't really rebuilt it for whatever reason. I don't know why, really. So in Life is Strange, what we basically learned was a lesson of pain. What Steph was left with. And she was left with a memory of her mother saying goodbye over the phone, telling her that the tornado is coming, that she's gonna hide. And, well, we know that it didn't quite work out for her because she died. We learned that she sort of ghosted Mikey, like she was avoiding him. And that makes a lot of sense because she was associating him with that pain. I understand that so well. I would have done the same thing. I think sometimes it's easier to ignore some stuff than to face it and confront it, or sometimes you're just not ready, you're not there yet. She wasn't ready to interact with him as much, and she was kind of in touch, but then again she was also avoiding him. She had a beautiful, lovely conversation with Mikey about all that, and that was actually a very nice moment in that DLC. We were able to see how she's been working through that over 4 seasons. We are able to see how she's bound to do somewhat repetitive tasks, maybe because she was just trying to power through, maybe she was just trying to focus on something else. And she was mostly alone in that DLC, like there was no one else in that DLC, not even a cat. Eventually she sort of started to move on, and that's where the DLC ended, and that's where we saw Alex coming in, so we know that this is where True Colors started, which was a really nice wrap-up. Obviously it was a very interesting story for many reasons, morality-wise. It's sort of cool to wonder what would be the aftermath of that tornado. At the same time, I feel like they really focused on the negative sides of that decision. Like I mentioned before, I saved Chloe. I stand by my choice. I believe it was the right choice. The game tried to tell me that there were bad consequences to that, and I think partially I was supposed to feel a bit bad about it, but I really didn't as much because I don't think it was my responsibility. I feel like my responsibility was to save Chloe. That's my opinion. I recorded a video about that, so maybe let's not really get into that right now. Story-wise, that's pretty much it. There were some references here and there. There are some flashbacks we were able to actually hear Chloe, we were able to hear Rachel, which was really nice. We found out that Steph's not really in touch with Chloe as much, that she left and that she's wandering somewhere away. That makes sense because, well, Rachel, she was partially Deck9's baby. Like, even though Don't not created Rachel, it was Deck9 that really brought her to life and created the person that we knew from Before the Storm, so it does make sense that they would have referenced her. It also makes so much sense that they would dedicate an entire DLC to Steph, because Steph was a beloved character from Before the Storm. They brought her back, they gave her a pretty major role in their game, and they also dedicated an entire DLC because they knew that people wanted that. Now, it might be wishful thinking on my side, but I sort of think that they wasted a chance to give us more. There's many of us that still miss Max and Chloe. I'm not saying that they had to do it, that they had to bring up Max and Chloe. I think True Colors was a strong enough game to carry itself. Like, it didn't need any additional characters from previous games to keep us excited. However, I feel like since they decided to go the tornado route, since they decided to mention the aftermath of the tornado, I would love to hear about Max. And I didn't. Maybe because Max wasn't Deck9's baby, Rachel was, so it just makes sense that they wouldn't really do that. That's a technical point of view. Story-wise, of course, Steph didn't really know Max, and since she mentioned that she's not in touch with Chloe, then she wouldn't even have known that Max exists. She wouldn't have known that Max had anything to do with the tornado. But Chloe could have called. Like, we spent so much time in that radio booth, people were calling, and I feel like maybe instead of hearing Chloe and Rachel through the memories, we could have had Chloe calling Steph in the radio booth. Max could have been with her. Again, I'm not saying that they had to bring in Max. I know that some of you wouldn't even like that, but I feel like that was the only chance for us to actually find out what's going on with them. Maybe Deck9 didn't want to step into Don't-Not's shoes because there were rumors about Max and Chloe's coming back in a 4th installment. That would be a sort of a sequel to the original game. And if they do that, then maybe it wouldn't be as wise to drop in hints here and there. There's already stuff that needs to be acknowledged, like stuff that was mentioned in Life is Strange 2, because we know that Sean actually saw Arcadia Bay destroyed. He was also talking to David Madsen, and David was talking to Chloe over the phone. We know that she was with Max. Again, that is if you saved Chloe. So perhaps giving us too much stuff about them that would need to be acknowledged without Don't-Not's approval, maybe that wouldn't be the wisest choice. So I'm thinking maybe that's why they didn't actually have Chloe call Steph. but I would have liked that. So like I mentioned before, having Steph deal with the aftermath of leaving Arcadia Bay with her mother's death in my playthrough with Mikey, that was nice, but I would say that didn't rise to Farewell's level. I think it would be very hard to create a DLC that would. You know how classic the original game is for all of us. Having a DLC with Max and Chloe as kids, having that fatum over their heads, William's death, Max leaving, actually showing us that. That was basically a ready-to-go success. That type of a sad, nostalgic, sentimental story about our favorite characters, that had to be a success. Now, Steph was always sort of a side character anyway, especially in Before the Storm. She was sort of a main character in True Colors, but she's not the protagonist. It was interesting to find out about her, but I'm just not certain if it was as interesting. I enjoyed that story. I know that many people enjoyed that DLC a lot, but in my opinion, it was way too long. Like, I was streaming it and it took me almost 4 hours to finish it, and I didn't even explore like everything. I know that it took Katie Benz, the actress that's voice acting Steph, it took her 8 hours to finish that DLC. At least to me that's sort of exhausting. Like, I don't mind exploring when it remains within the right proportions. For example, Farewell. You get to explore for a bit, but then it was mostly the story that carried it. In the DLC, Wavelengths DLC, I definitely feel like the tasks, the exploring part, they took over. They weren't proportionate, they weren't adequate when it comes to the main story. Because I feel like what I got was 30% of Steph's background, 30% of her story, things that happened to her, and then 60-70% was walking around, taking care of tasks, managing the store. Again, I know that some people actually enjoyed that. I know that for some people it was okay, but to me it was underwhelming. I would have preferred to have less tasks. That DLC was longer than every single True Colors episode. They were roughly like 2 hours long. If you explored more, maybe 3 hours, but if you explored enough and Wavelengths, it could have taken you several hours. It's a bit odd to release a DLC that's longer than the episodes itself, and that partially gives us less. So again, I'm not really criticizing, I'm just saying it's not my cup of tea. I would have preferred to have a DLC that's story focused. If we wanted to follow the tornado route, great, but it had to be more. Partially I feel like the flashbacks in a form of Steph's memories, maybe they weren't the right choice too. Like, I think I would love to have actual people occur. I was hoping to see Gabe at least, but it was only Steph, so in a way it was immersive to only have her over there in that DLC, but part of me wished it would have been more. So like I mentioned before, it's not really a criticism, I'm just saying it wasn't for me. I would have preferred for it to be like shorter, definitely shorter. Playing these ads in a radio booth, doing that wasn't really as much fun for me. The dating app, it felt odd to use it, knowing that I will meet Alex soon. Of course, we know that Steph didn't know it, so she could have been dating and such, but it's just sort of weird for me. So if I were to compare Farewell and Wavelengths, the winner is Farewell without any doubt, because it's one of my favorite Life is Strange episodes, installments. I'm putting it really high. I can't actually compare it even, because it was that good, with Wavelengths being simply okay. I prefer the actual episodes in True Colors. Now with Before the Storm, I would say that I maybe preferred the DLC to the episodes, and here that's the opposite. I definitely preferred hanging around with Alex. For whatever reason, Wavelengths lacked these poetic scenes that the game provided. While saying that it wasn't bad, it also didn't blow my mind. I know that some people liked it, I know that some of you loved it. That's really good for you. Yeah, for reasons that I mentioned already, I wish there would have been more. Maybe more flashbacks, maybe in a different form, maybe more people, less of exploring and less of tasking around. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts, I'd love to discuss that, so do let me know in the comments down below. Follow me on Twitter for any news and random thoughts. And you can also join my Discord server. Remember, you gotta accept the rules. Major shout out to my patrons Robert, Samuel, Noel, Dan, Martin, Mathew, Mikey, Tomasz, Kizzamity, Flynn, Mathieu, and all the other patrons. Stay safe, guys. This was all from Stop Me O channel, well actually Scare Me O channel, now in Spooktober. Bye.